I'm Ian. I've got invasive aspergillosis. I have a fungal infection in my brainstem and cerebellum. The long and short of it is that it manifests as meningitis, and I also, at the earliest stages of infection, I had hydrocephalus, which is too much fluid in the brain. So I have a shunt that's siphoning off the excess and depositing it in my stomach. So 2020, 2 years ago, I started developing headaches that I couldn't get rid of, couldn't explain away with any other illness. It wasn't a short-term thing. It was it lasted for quite a long time and developed quite quickly. And then effectively I got a lot of misdiagnoses. So a fair few people thought it was sinusitis, and gave me some antibiotics to see if that would improve matters, which it didn't. So I self-referred to a private neurologist who listened to what I had to say and said, "Oh, it sounds like you've got low CSF pressure, so cerebral spinal fluid." So I was admitted to the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery, Queen Square. They ran a number of tests and confirmed that I did in fact have a spinal fluid leak, which stemmed from an earlier accident that I'd had, where in essence part of my spine was repaired with cement, and that cement had spiked and pierced the dura, so the spinal column. So that was patched up and I was discharged, but a few days, in fact probably 2 days later, I was picked up by an ambulance because I started developing these meningitis-like symptoms, so sensitive to light, tinnitus, stiff neck, and so on. So originally it was obviously the worry that it was bacterial meningitis, so they put me on an antibiotic drip, but they carried out lumbar punctures, couldn't get anything to grow, and eventually sent it to the fungal lab, who managed to grow an Aspergillus sample. So the diagnosis was fungal meningitis, with the underlying cause being this invasive aspergillosis. It's obviously an ongoing thing. It isn't something that's going to go away overnight. I have this delightful pill box here that effectively keeps the infection in check and keeps the inflammation from the infection down. The consequences to me, I get fatigued a lot more easily than I used to. I struggle with balance issues, with walking. My limb strength gives out in certain key directions, so it can be very difficult for me to, get dressed or to wash. And yeah, the long and short of how it affected me is that I've pretty much had to give up all of my existing hobbies. I can't go back and do those anytime soon. If I try to run, I fall over. So I don't, or I haven't tried that for a while, but I don't imagine that it's changed. And the sort of the initial consequence from a work perspective is that I had to give up, you know, my previous job that was, I think, quite well suited to me, and I had to take on something with a little bit less responsibility, a little bit less stress, so that I have time to recover effectively. But it's meant a significant reduction in income, which maybe I'll be able to make up at some stage in the future, but I don't know for sure. So I try to go for regular walks to build up my ability to actually travel independently. I have to use, usually during the day, one stick for balance. If it's at night or uneven territory, then I'll use two. And that's not really something that I can do without at the moment. I would struggle to get around at all if it wasn't for that. Aside from that, the new job that I've got lets me work from home as a default, so I can get pretty much as much done as I would have done normally, sitting at my desk at home, and that's, you know, really helpful. But yeah, it's not ideal, and obviously the changes are sort of forced upon me, and they're not something that I would choose. And I wish I knew a bit more about what to expect. It's incredibly unusual to have this type of fungal infection. So while I've been put on voriconazole and terbinafine to try and address the infection, there's very little data to suggest complete remission after a certain period of time, or whether this is an infection that I'll live with for the rest of my life. I genuinely don't know. So yeah, I don't know the prognosis, unfortunately.